Alright, I know that first one was a little long, but there's a lot we had to go through with the lighting. So in this tutorial I want to show you how you would take a point light and begin to create shadows. So I have my same scene, I select my point light, and my attribute editor is open, and I scroll down until I see the shadow section. Now you'll first see a shadow color, but you'll see something called depth map shadow attributes. Depth map shadows are your least intensive shadows, and they can be adequate at times in your scenes, but sometimes they can get kind of jaggedy and not look as well as some of your higher quality shadows, but it's a good place to start. So we can say use depth map shadows, and you turn on shadows per light. There's no universal click where you say turn on shadows for all lights. You kind of select which lights you want to see shadows on. So I'm going to use depth map shadows, and let's go ahead and I can't remember which one it is. There we go. And I'm gonna, I don't know if the IPR will do shadows, but we'll find out. So you can already see what's happening here. So we still have our different colored lights, and if you notice, I'm trying to move this closer to the object. So I don't think my shadow is updating as I move that. So that's one of the limitations of your software renderer. My scene's not updating either. I'm changing the view. So certain things are updating. The intensity of the specular highlight on that wall is, but the shadow's not. So just know that the IPR has its limitations. But I wanted to show you something, how this has depth map shadows on it, and the shadow gets larger as it goes away. Okay, the closer I get to the snowman, that's because the rays from that point light go in all directions. Okay, and then you can see it on this last pillar here. See how that's at an angle. Let me pull it here in the center of all these and render this. You see how that's coming out, and they get wider as they go. The reason I mentioned that is that there's another type of light that has parallel rays. It can also have shadows, but its shadows are always parallel, and you won't get this shadow that gets increasingly wider. It's usually used to simulate lights that would be very far distance, like this kind of like the sun, and you're not going to get these exaggerated shadows as you would with a light that's really close to you. This would be good for certain types of, like a flashlight or something, when you're close to an object. But if you want to have a distant light, those are usually the next type of light I want to show you, which are your directional lights. Now, this is important. I hate it when it does this. Your scene may do what I just did. I clicked create light, directional light, and when it did it, it went into this very bizarre mode that my whole scene moved. I get these three arrows. What's going on? Well, in the create directional light option box, you'll see something called interactive placement. For some reason mine was checked. I don't know if yours will be checked by default, but that means I can use the camera, move the camera around to say what angle do I want this light to shine, which can be neat if you're placing a spotlight or something. I find it gets on my nerves sometimes, so I'd like to turn interactive placement off. hit apply because once I'm in interactive placement, I'm no longer in my perspective view, if you notice. So I have to go to panel, perspective view, and this is the light I placed. So if you ever want to look through a light, you can select the light and go to look through selected, and now I am looking through that that light. I'm going to go back to my perspective view. Alright, so let's see what, so let's turn off some of these. I'm going to go, we're going to say you're not illuminated, and you're not illuminated, and you're not illuminated. And I probably forgot one, but let's see where we're at. Okay. So right now we have just the directional light, and as I change its angle, I think our IPR will work again now. You notice those rays are parallel, so if this were exactly 90 degrees or exactly flat, you would have no light on the ground if it were parallel with the ground, because those rays are parallel. They're not broadcasting all directions like the point light. So when it has a grazing angle to a surface, such as the ground plane, we start getting a little bit of light, and as this becomes more and more perpendicular to that surface is going to get brighter and brighter. Okay, so these are used often, like I said, to imitate the sun. They also have depth map shadows. I'll go ahead and turn those on, and those will not update in IPR, so I'm just going to have to do this. Now, if you notice the jaggedy nature of some of these, sometimes depth map shadows are really good and work really nicely, and sometimes they have issues, and you'll get they're just not a high quality shadow, and a lot of it depends on your map size here. You can dial up your map size. Sometimes that will help. And sometimes it won't. But that's a directional light. Okay. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I want to talk about at the moment. Well, that's it for this tutorial. I just wanted to introduce to you shadows in the directional light. In the next tutorial, I want to show you how to make a little more higher quality shadows using ray tracing.